Hello, my name's Aidan Ridyard and I'm going to talk to you about the career of architecture. We make buildings, we make spaces, we make environments, but really they're all about opportunities, and it's opportunities to change things and change things for the better. And being an architect empowers you to lead that process and be an integral part of it. So, what do architects do? We design environments, and that can be the immediate space that surrounds you, the furniture, the surroundings, the room, the space, the volume, through to cities and public spaces and the things that surround that. It can be from issues to do with keeping you safe, keeping you comfortable, making sure we don't waste the planet's resources, through to great ideas about how you might work with light or space or volume or movement. And that constantly changing playing field with which you work is why it's such an exciting profession. Now, it's interesting to think about how we work with different types of client and how that gives you different opportunities as a designer. If I go back 2 years ago, the building which became won the prize for the best building in Britain that year in 2018 was the Bloomberg headquarters in London. At the time, it was reputedly the most expensive building in the world, £1.2 billion, although nobody would tell you quite how much they spent on it. It's beautifully crafted. It's a wonderfully made building, fantastic materials, incredibly sustainable, fantastic working spaces. They even discovered a Roman temple as they were building the foundations for it. It summarises what you can do with a huge budget and a client with vision and a great location in the middle of a great city. You can do incredible things. But what's really interesting was that the next year's prize-winning scheme was a project for some council housing in Norwich. Fraction of the budget, 105 low-carbon homes, working with issues to do with sustainability, building communities, and just doing the simple things really well. And that's a lovely synopsis of our profession, that it can go from one extreme to the other, but if you do it well, each is equally valid. An example I often give young designers is the Houses of Parliament, and you look at Big Ben and the river frontage there. That building was designed by one guy who did everything from that big building right down to the wallpaper, the light switches, the door handles. He was called Augustus Welby Northmore Pugin, if you want to look him up. Slightly odd character. Died of overwork by the age of 45, I think he was. And that kind of tells you a lot about that building. But it also tells you a lot about what a designer does. And it's that kind of all-encompassing vision from the micro to the macro, which makes it special. And at the end of the day, it's about how you simply put things together to make things. And that basic creativity is what I enjoy most. Now, that can be from the joy of putting two pieces of timber together and making sure they fit in a certain way, through to a building which is like the airport in Osaka, which is so long that they had to take account of the curvature of the earth in terms of how they set out the glazing and the roof. And that kind of breadth of spectrum carries on in other ways. So this summer I've been working on things like designing temporary structures which can be moved around as almost pieces of flat pack pop-up architecture. I've been working on designs for stage sets. I've been working on buildings. I've been working on master plans for bits of townscape. It's an ever-changing world. Architects will be responsible for everything from fashion to yacht design to graphic design. It's a profession which lets you plug into all sorts of different creative avenues. You will find there's huge diversity of ethnicity, of gender. It's a really kind of broad, welcoming profession in terms of who you are and what you bring to it. In fact, the more different you are, bring it on, because it just makes it a richer profession. Generally, in terms of numbers at the moment, in terms of registered architects in this country, about 30% are women. My practice bucks that trend slightly. We're the other way around. We're 60%, and the guys are in the minority. But it's becoming more and more a flat playing field, which is only healthy. Another interesting thing about it is that we've got architects in our office from probably within 30 designers. We've got people from 10 countries. So it's a very fluid world in terms of movement internationally, to work internationally. If you want to go and work in other countries, or people from other countries coming to work here, you develop an international network really quickly from people who work all around the world. And those opportunities are there for you. And it starts at quite an early age. You know, I'm some middle-aged. I'm doing buildings overseas. I have been doing that for probably 10 or 15 years now. But we had a young graduate last year who went and got a job in Norway, and his commute to work was cycling around Oslo Fjord in the morning, which we're all very jealous of when we're catching the bus to the office. So it has great opportunities like that. So what do we do? I wrote a little bit of a list about what we do with our skills. Very much it's about using them to make buildings. And that can be everything from using a pencil and sketching an idea, to talking to somebody and working through that idea, be they another professional engineer, a climate specialist, a landscape designer, pulling those ideas together. Then we often use the computer to kind of model it and work these things through in 3D. We'll often do physical models, actually cutting things out, gluing things together to test ideas and understand that three-dimensionality of it. And then ultimately you're getting the information together to take that to a builder to make it happen on a building site. And that's the kind of joy of it, is it goes from that mark in the sketchbook, that kind of little bit of an idea that you doodled, to something which you can actually go and sit in and stand in, and is going to be there for years to come. And that's quite something special. Why should you do it? I begin with a simple statement: you've got to love architecture, and that's really what it keeps coming back to. You've got to love it, because it's not an easy path, and you'll be challenged in many ways along the road, and you've got to be able to come back to that touchstone. So, well, actually, I really love what I do. I've been doing it for over 25 years now. I have bad days, but generally I love it, and that's why I keep coming back for more. You've got to want to make something tangible. It's not something which just stays in the virtual world. Very easy to be a designer using virtual media these days, and you'll create incredible things. You can see it in movies, and you can see it in graphics and books and illustrations. But what we actually make is something that somebody has to build and make, and it becomes something physical, and that kind of crafting of it at the end of the day and using the technology to make it real is really exciting. So you've got to be interested in that kind of making thing. You've got to want to face ever-changing challenges, because no 2 days will be the same. There is not that boring day. Even when you think you're doing the same kind of thing day in, day out, there'll always be different variations that kind of make it nuanced and interesting. You've got to be able to handle pressure. We work to deadlines. It's always about that next presentation, that next way of pitching an idea to somebody that they will hopefully come back and commission you with. So that kind of pressure thing is quite intense at times. You've got to be able to deal with that. That means long hours, but it swings and roundabouts. You have tough weeks, you have easy weeks. You've got to be able to cope with criticism. When you go to architecture school, the first thing that they teach you to do is put your ideas on a wall, and people will critique them. And that can be positive and it can be negative. But you kind of learn how to deal with it and how to process that. It carries on. Just this year, I finished a building which was quite controversial, the designs for it, and it got criticised in social media, and I found that pretty tough. I didn't like it. But you bounce back and you come back stronger, and I know that building will be great, and I know I'll prove them wrong when it's finished. But it's not something that goes away, and you've got to have that slightly thick skin about it. Not something I'm great at. And then you've got to believe that you can make something special, because if you're just doing this as a day in, day out job, don't bother. Do something easier, do something better paid. You're doing this because you believe in it and you love it. Go back to that love thing. And then after all of this, you've still got to love it. So that 25 years down the line, you're still thinking, God, I love this game. It's really good fun. So what do you need to study? That's a question that I often get asked. I think the more you study, the better. The more rounded you are as a person, with lots of things fizzing around to inspire you, the better. So I think you could look at the maths and science side. I think you can look at the arts and design side. Both are very valid. A blend of the two is excellent. But I'd also put into things there like music, languages, drama, literature. They all make you a more rounded, creative person. Now, traditional route of qualification is that you begin with a degree course, then you go and work for a year, then you go back and do a second degree, and then you do another year's work before you can professionally qualify. That's all beginning to get a bit more fluid now, with people offering part-time courses and the rise of apprenticeships, and I think that's going to be the big thing that's going to change in the profession in the next few years. So why you shouldn't do it. At this point, if I had a screen behind me, I would show you a photograph of a sports car driving around an alpine pass and say, no, you don't do it for the money, because you're not going to make enough as an architect in those terms. Why you do it is because you love it. Go back to that passion thing again. It's about what you get out of it at a spiritual level, in terms of making something and making a difference and changing the world. And that's why we get out of bed in the morning. Don't get me wrong, it's not a badly paid profession. Just looking at a graph where you look at it compared to other professions, obviously you're not up there with medicine and dentistry, but you're kind of in there with nursing, teaching, etc. So it's not terrible, but it's not a high-flying earning career. So why do I do it? I think my personal reasons are very much about that variety and the fact that I can be working on a new idea for a new type of building. At the moment, COVID is throwing up lots of challenges. Pinned on my wall behind the camera, this is my COVID studio. This summer, I've got a project for a mobile opera house which uses shipping containers to create a performance space that works in a COVID-safe way. But I've also got a photograph of a project I'm working on which deals with a 600-year-old medieval building that we're kind of trying to adapt to a new lease of life. And that kind of variety of new problems, old problems, sensitive sites, radical ideas, that's the freshness, and that's what really kind of does it for me. I've gone down a fairly conventional route of study to get here, but I think the opportunities that you have now are getting more and more flexible, and you've got more and more opportunity to earn a living as you qualify, and that only is only healthy. Architectural study is great. You do get fantastic opportunities with it. Even when I studied 25 years ago, I really got to see the world as I was learning about my profession, and that opportunity carries on into how I build now. And I've been lucky enough to do projects sort of halfway around the world over the years for various clients, and those are great things that kind of come with it. In terms of the variety that you work on, as I say, it can be everything from the micro to the macro. So again, looking at my wall behind the camera, I've got a chunk of new townscape that we've been planning out for a town in Britain to expand that with a whole bunch of new houses, community facilities and industry, etc. Down to kind of micro detail, looking at somebody's expansion of a medieval townhouse where they live and putting a room on the back of it, which has a fantastic view, which is probably no bigger than the room I'm sitting in now, but has to be designed in a really special way because it's part of a 300-year-old building and it sits in a really sensitive location. And I go back to that variety. It's the variety and that kind of journey of different opportunities that you get. Every day is a school day for me, and I really love that. And that's kind of why I think it's such an important career opportunity. If you're creative, you enjoy making things and making things happen, then it's a really good thing for you to potentially look at. I think becoming an architect is something that will change you as a person, and it changes how you see the world around you, and I see that as being a really positive thing. I have learned so much, I've experienced so much, and I've been on an incredible journey, and I really kind of recommend that to you. If you have any kind of creative passion about you, it's a great thing to look at. What's really good is that you never stop learning. It's not something you do and that's it, but it's constantly evolving. I'm in my mid-50s now, and I'm only just starting to get into my stride, I think. I'm starting to get good at what I do. And that's the delight. You're constantly feeling that you're getting better and better. You never stop learning, and there's a world of opportunities out there if you're creative about it and passionate enough about it, and you believe in your skills and you believe that you can make a difference. And boy, at the moment, do we need to make a difference. the spaces that we occupy, the way we use our resources, the way that we protect the environment. We need great designers now as never before. So there's never been a more important time to get involved with shaping environments and designing better futures for us all. So I hope that's been interesting. And if you've got any questions, please let me know through the various media channels you've got available. And I give you all my very best wishes. Thank you.